All right. Woo. Might be a little bit too zoomed in on me. Oh, there's about right. Welcome. Sorry for the yet again impromptu stream, but I've had a day. Let's just say I've had a day, but I'm glad to be here with you fine folk today. Let me get a couple of things, or at least one thing straight. Let's see if that worked. All right. Ooh, it did. It did work. Good. Okay. Let me switch over here. Here we go. Let's see. Can I do that? Yes, I can. Can I do that? Yes, I can. Can I do that? Okay. Now I feel like I'm too zoomed in. All right. So I thought, I need to unzoom myself in now. Let's see. Ooh. Okay. Oh yeah, my chair is also going down on me. There we go. That kind of helps. I was gonna say it's Monday, but no, it's not. It's Tuesday. Hope everyone had a great Labor Day as well. Okay. I don't know how long this will take, but I'm happy to go through examples and run through it all. And if you followed some of the streams in the past, went through a bunch of this as we kind of developed it. But I thought, since I put out that Hex template demo, it's a short. You can check it on YouTube. It's also on Instagram and elsewhere if you feel like checking that out. And that has this in it. I thought it was kind of a good time to probably revisit this a bit and talk through it again. Hey, Jennings, welcome. Oh, yeah, well, sorry I caught you leaving for work. But yeah, the stream will be here when you get back. Hey, Son of Sofa Man, you have missed nothing because I literally have just started. Literally. Let me do a little bit more things here. I think if I do that and I do this, I can give it a nice color. And then I can move. Can I move this whole thing? I should be able to move the whole thing. There we go. It's probably, I guess this is good. Okay, yeah, it's Son of Sofa Man was a late start for me today, but my late start is your gain, apparently. Sorry for any European folks who missed the stream today, because my apologies. This is some watered down hibiscus, kind of a aqua jamaica kind of drink for the working man. Okay. So I came up with this system, and yes, I did come up with it, which probably means get ready for it to be super imperfect. And I call it traps. I wanted to come up with something that I thought was at least memorable in some way, or that I could remember. And it's easy for me to remember traps, though the words, turbidity is a bit of a strange word. I probably pick something else, but the other ones fit pretty well, I think. So turbidity is the one odd duck, so to speak, but basically would be similar to the attributes that you use as a character, only in this case, they're for your hexes. So something you could quickly kind of eyeball and look at it and say, okay, it's got a number. And then from that number, you can glean something about its difficulty. You could also use it in various mechanics. I'm using it with my Do Anything D6, which again, if you've watched previous streams, I've gone over the development of which, basically using kind of a dice pool. And these would represent the number of successes. So for example, let me just go through. So we have traps. That's the acronym. T for turbidity, which essentially how difficult it is to navigate, which would also include like getting bearings or anything. How hard is it to kind of find your, to take a sighting, basically navigate through a hex? That's your turbidity. Ruggedness, how hard is it to navigate, right? The more difficult the terrain, right, the higher that you would expect the ruggedness to be. Hey, Ian. Activity is basically how densely populated is it? You could use this for your wandering creature checks or other kind of encounter checks. The higher the number, then you'd want to have the more often encounters might show up. Peril is for basically how dangerous it is. I don't have a particular mechanic for this, but it's good for me if I was using, for example, a really big monster list, right? And I wanted to have one, maybe an overloaded monster list. So maybe I'm only rolling a D10, but I'm going to have D20 of monsters. And you wonder, well, how would you ever get to the monsters of 20? Well, if you use peril, you could have peril add on to the number. So maybe I do something like, well, it's 2d6 plus 1 or something, or d10 plus 1, however you want to set the curve. And your peril could be 0, could be 10, it could be whatever. So the higher that number would be, then you'd scale towards the more dangerous monsters. You could also use it as akin to just a number to describe like your level of a dungeon. If you want to say this is basically a dungeon level 10 and you want to make a hex that's roughly equivalent to dungeon level 10, you could set the peril to 10. So it kind of gives you that kind of number as well. And then finally, scarcity. Well, how scarce are resources? If you're trying to find food, water, shelter, whatever it is, firewood, peat moss, hamburgers, whatever, how hard is it to find stuff? That would be scarcity. So hopefully that all makes sense. And then I did go through, and these are, I kind of used BX as a starting mark, but I don't think they're exactly the same. But basically, I went through a bunch of these terrain types and just kind of trying to sort of place them on the scale. And this one HD, in this case, means hex dice as opposed to hit dice, is basically a generalized number. It doesn't, you know, you can look at it. It's roughly like I think it was kind of, you average all these numbers together and you get that one, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. You could math it out however you like. But in other words, if you wanted to have a great shorthand, just say, hey, your grasslands, that's HD2, then you would just use 2 as the number for everything, as opposed to having more granularity. So if you don't want a lot of granularity, but you just want a roughly, same way with hit dice with monsters, if you just want a really rough, you know, the details or whatever the details are, but I really just want a kind of an idea of how difficult it is, you could use that hex die number, the HD number, and that's fine if you want more granular. Same way that attributes, right, kind of roll up a little bit to HD or sort of to levels. If you, depending on where you want to be, you can use that. So that's kind of where that comes from. And I kind of just mocked up just a sampling of what these could be for different terrain types. Obviously clear, and I could have zeros. I don't, but you know, you could probably put something, though generally in my system, it's how many successes do you need? So usually 1 is what you need. So you start with 1 and then you go from there. So let's say grasslands an example. It's not hard really to navigate. It's a little bit more rugged than clear, which would be your kind of roads and basically settled areas. It's can be fairly dense. Grasslands tend to be, I think, can be fairly dense. But again, if you have particular grasslands or your idea of grasslands is different, then use a different number. How deadly is it? How dangerous? Well, it's a little bit more dangerous than just your settled areas, but not too much. And then how scarce is stuff? Not that much, right? And it kind of scales up. I tried to put these kind of in order of difficulty in terms of, you know, or how demanding the terrain is. So from, you know, clear to grasslands to woodlands to wetlands to badlands to mountains, and then barren, which would include your sort of ice flow, well, not ice flows, your sort of glaciers, deserts, that sort of thing. So that is well, that's the list. Let me see here. Let me switch out real quick and I can add in my sheet. Hold on a minute. I should have done this before. How do I get out of this? No, you're not helping me. I thought it was F11. It is F11. Okay. Hold on a minute. Where's my, I guess it's, it'll be, did I put that here? Where did I put it? Hold on a minute. Scrolling. Okay, can I do it like that? Will it let me do that and paste it, or is it going to give me problems? Oh, it did do it. Okay, so here's my sheet. Are you going to let me make this? Ooh. Okay, good enough. So here's my sheet. So you can see here, I have these here. So essentially you have hex dice, HD, all these kind of roll up into it, though, you know, I'm not trying to be super scientific. If I had all kinds of calculators and the web things, I probably would just have it average and maybe round up or down, round to nearest, but don't feel required to do that if you don't wish to do that. And I know, who was it? It might have been Brian Smith, friend of the channel, Brian Smith, who asked for some examples. I mean, other than these, but these are really here to be, I guess, signposts for you. signposts for you, places to just kind of level set. And the thing is, I was thinking about this, it will work fine, you know, for one thing it really finds sometimes. Hey, Suez. So if you want to use this using, you know, traps with a D20 type skill system, like you're using 5th edition, or just using some kind of skill system that's D20 based, you can just go with the DC is 9 plus traps hit die. If you wanted to start at kind of even Steven, because remember, some of these, depending on what you're doing, might go high or low, but if you wanted to start with just roughly, hey, whatever it is you're trying to do, that means that would give you clear as basically being 10s across the board, and then you'd kind of be going up from there. So if you're in the desert and you're looking for something, I don't know, cactus to get some moisture out of, then you'd have DC 16. If you wanted to start with 10, it depends. I guess maybe 10's a better number. I don't know. It essentially comes down to, if you start with 9, you're giving the players a slightly better chance off the bat, because the average of rolling, say, a D20 is 10.5. So the averages are going to roll at least 10. And then you add modifiers on top of it. So chances are 11 is probably I suppose they could have a negative modifier, but, you know, really talking on average, they're going to roll, if it's +0, they're going to roll at least 10. So that would put, if you start at 9, that would put this as basically 50%. And then going up from there, if you wanted to be a little bit less than 50%, you could start there. So whatever you like. 9 or, 19. That would be good. 9 or 10. And also keeping in mind is I'm using this kind of scale, but you could change the scale for whatever you like. Hey, Krister, if you want to use 2 increments of 2, for example, so that because you're using D20 and you want to have it jump up more, or if you're using D100s and you want to use 10, 15, some other type of percent, you can. All right. These are there to you for yours. I'm using it. My default mode, but of course is not stopping you from doing it, is I'm just using traps with 2d6. Number of required successes is traps HD value. So in my case, when I'm using the D6 system, I'm just using these end values. So in the D6, this kind of do anything D6, I'm using, all I want is 6s. You're going to roll a bunch of dice and you just want to count your 6s. And these would indicate how many 6s you would need. There are some caveats, because you might think like, oh my gosh, 7 successes, that's a lot. And it is. But oftentimes things can be stretched out over a longer time frame. So for example, if you're looking for that cactus so you can get a little bit of water, and you're in the desert and you decide to spend 1 3-hour exploration phase, travel phase, looking for this plant, and you don't find it, but you get 3 successes, you can continue your search, spend another segment of time doing it, another 3 hours, and then you could roll those successes over. So in that way, you can kind of spend time to do these when that time is available. There might be times where it's not available. Orcs are chasing you and you need to find that cactus to hide. You may not have extra time frames to spend, and it's kind of like, oh, well, you're going to have to figure something out. But if you just have the time, you can spend it. So you can have potentially a lot of required successes, but you could build it up over turns. You can bring in more people to help you. There are lots of ways to sort of generate more dice using people, using time. If maybe you have a spell or equipment that can help you. Maybe you have a spell to detect water, but to detect it, you still have to be within 100 or 200 feet. So you still need to do some exploration, but now it gives you some kind of area. You don't need to be right on top of it to see it. So that anything might help, right? Anything you have that might help can be at either giving you successes or adding dice to your pool. And then the more experienced you are, also you can get more dice that way. So there are a bunch of ways to mitigate the fact that you need a bunch of successes, but it is kind of intentional because I want to intrigue My idea is kind of intrigue players with making bargains or making deals or taking on consequences when trying to kind of push and add results. But that's that. And then basically these numbers, again, are base values. So if you have wetlands that are more dangerous than these, raise those values up. If you have wetlands that are less dangerous, lower them down. If you have things that you can also then, modify on the fly, right? So maybe let's just do an example here. We've got let's just call it the ghastly wetlands. Oops, let me cross that. Come on. Thank you. There we go. So I've got, let's just put the defaults in there. T4, or actually HD4. T4, oh, 4, it's all across the way. R4, 4, A4. Oh, I keep shooting. P4, S4. Oh, I need to stop doing that. I do that. Let's just scroll in here so you can see it. Is this already bold? Bold doesn't seem to be doing much. But anyway, so you start here like that. There's our default. And now, but I want to add some special effects. So maybe at night +2. We're going to call it the, let's see, the yellow fog. Maybe I'll do it this way. So we have the yellow fog. So what happens, right? So it's T4, meaning that it's hard to navigate. Well, at night, even harder to navigate because this yellow fog rolls in that's disgusting and makes it even harder to see. And maybe you could even do something if you want to have something else. You could have something more dangerous at night. I don't know why uppercase dangerous. Plus, whoops. Let's see, that was peril +1 also at nights. Something like that. So basically you could have a really quick, like you could with a creature. It's really the whole idea of this was to be able to have something essentially that mimics what you might have for a creature stat block. So you might even have effects. Let's see. Let's call it nightly dangers. Something like that. And I don't know why I can't quite get. Oh, there, that's bolding. Maybe it is bolding. It's just so subtle with the small. I'm trying to make it more. Oh, whoops. Does this make sense? Am I... So I can actually delete these two. So I could have in some... I could have some version of that where you end up with this. And maybe I could add something else. Eerie. Let's not do that. Eerie. Rank. What are some other good swampy damp, humid. So maybe you end up with something like that. How does that look to people? Oh, that's a good one. Fetid. Excellent word. Oops. Oh, I did not mean to add you in. Garbage. Thank you. Fetid's a great word. Fetid. Rank. Damp. Humid. So you can have that. Now, this is not to say that you shouldn't have somewhere a more necessarily, fleshed out, maybe have a full worksheet somewhere that you can have to kind of track things more in detail, which would be this one over here. And these things would all map to here. Your descriptors all map into there. Your traps dice would all map into here. Your picture, however you want to draw or symbolize, make a symbol or whatever for your hex would be here. You could write down the major terrain, the minor terrain. Obviously, encounters don't fit in this space, though we could. I mean, you could put something really quick in here. Some of Soulman says for descriptors, would you want to include sound, smells, and sights, or are you limited to feelings? No, really, whatever. I really, part of the reason why, so Son of Sofa Man, part of my reason for using dot grids here is I really wanted to make it as open and as free form for someone as possible to really take these and do with them what they will. So I essentially have kind of pseudo columns for sight, sound, smells, and atmosphere. But honestly, use these however you want to. You really, just look at all this stuff as kind of suggestions, right? These are ways that, hey, you can use them for this. But if you have tons of atmosphere and you don't have a lot of sights, great, then just fill it with atmosphere. Just to kind of think of them more as almost prompts. And yes, so says, I guess rank as a smell. Yes, I was referring to rank as a smell. Yeah, rank, fetid, gross. I did, it may be a surprise, Son of Sofa Man, but I did actually put some thought into it, just a little bit. I don't have much thought to me, but what I did have, I did. And then if we wanted to add, because the one thing we don't have is features in here, we could add those in. There we could have maybe some signs. Let's see, what are those trees called that are in? Is it cypress trees? No. Oh, we'll call it I don't know. Great old mound. Discoveries. Let's see. The abandoned fishing hut. The shrine to the what's long man. Broken traps, and then it could be the secret. What could be the secret? So we have the shrine, broken traps, the abandoned fishing hut. What could be hiding here in this shrine? What? Oh, let me me just do that to be consistent. I'm not sure. Well, all right, there we go. So you get something like this that more or less maps out to here. Pretty much. Obviously, the bigger sheet is going to give you more grainy. There's room for detail here, obviously, and especially if I was writing this out by hand, I could put all kinds of arrows and things. I could do similar to what I would do with here. I could do something, say, oh, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here, this goes there, kind of thing. How these all connect, like I did in my example. But barring that, that's what I would use the big sheet for. But if I just needed something in brief, or I could write it out. And I could also give these if I wanted to have some, if I wanted to, oops, sorry, I didn't need that. I just wanted to turn that off. I don't need this. Garbage. If I wanted to give these modifiers also, right, I could. So from here, easier to navigate, right? So maybe I'll say T-2, P+1. So if they're on that location, when I happen to need to roll for something, then I can. If they find the Great Old Mound and they want to navigate from there, well, from there you have a little bit of height, so maybe you're able to see over the yellow fog or whatever's happening, but it's more dangerous there. Fishing hut, maybe not as dangerous there. It's kind of a safe spot. Shrine of the Bogman, maybe it's just there, and then maybe where the broken traps are, it's more active. Actually, I think rather than it being, well, I'll give that. I'll just let that be that. -2. Less danger. And then this, we could just say, it's, you can say something like this. It's +1. It's, or actually, I could just say everything is +1 across the board. And that's kind of the usage. That is pretty much the usage of the whole shebang. I'm trying to think if there's anything that I really haven't covered. Well, I don't mind restating it. I tried to on the one of the things I added were these arrows. Well, I also added these icons, but the other thing I added were these arrows, and the arrows were kind of indicate the effort necessary. So if you have a sign, that's something that's obvious, super obvious. To go back to our example, if you're in the ghastly wetlands, the Great Old Mound is pretty obvious. As obvious as it is to find anything, it's going to be the first thing you find, right? The first thing you get in there, you decide to explore, whatever you do, the first thing you're going to find, the thing that's just going to shout out at you without having to really do any rolling is going to be, oh yeah, spend a few minutes mucking around, moving a bit, you're going to find the Great Mound. Even if it's foggy, you're going to see something, you're going to see its bulk looming up, whatever. It's pretty darn obvious. So we put that in the signs. Now to go from the mound, so you make it to the mound. Okay, now you're looking around for clues, signs, whatever. Pretty much just doing some kind of action at the mound. And I should probably make a note here. Let me just do this. Let me write this down. What makes a good sign? So what makes a good sign? I guess we just get into this. So first of all, it's very obvious. Very obvious in plain sight, so to speak. 2, it contains, let's see, I don't know, hints, clues, evidence towards discoveries. So basically, what I'm trying to say here conceptually is not only should a sign be obvious, the great old mound, obvious. You look around, you're going to see it. And remember, I'm keeping these things abstract. I don't care at this moment. I don't care for where in the hex the great mound is. You don't really need, I don't think you need to worry about it until you need to worry about it. When it becomes important to nail it down, then you nail it down. Until then, I'm not even going to worry about it. They find it. And if they're, because remember, at least the way I play, may be different, but the hexes are invisible. The players don't see them. They don't know where things lie within the hexes. Even if you were playing with a hex map, when you look at a hex map, it just has, oh, here's the cave symbol, or here's the hill symbol. It doesn't say where in the hex it is. So I'm not going to worry about it. At some point, it becomes important that the geographical location is somewhat pinned down to it being to the north, south, east, west, whatever, of some other landmark or some other thing. Then you can pin it down. Until then, don't care. Doesn't matter to me at all. But I want it to be obvious. I want it to see it. Have something the party can look at. And I mean, look at it and turn away. That's fine. Right? Because at least the way I play them, I'm not trying to push the players. I'm not trying to force them. This is not a narrative situation. They see it. They got other things to do. Perfect. They can always come back to it. And that's why I don't want to spend a whole lot of time fleshing it out if I'm not really going to use it. So you could have something like this here where we just did. It doesn't take me a few minutes. I don't even really need to have the secret. If I couldn't come up with one right away, I could just put that aside. In fact, I don't even need the discoveries. I could put that aside. All I really need to start is just that mound. Just that this is the thing that they're going to see when they enter the hex. And if they decide to interact with it, great. If they don't, great. But you want to make it interesting, I guess. That's another thing. You want to be intriguing. Should be interesting. You want to at least tempt your party to check it out. Maybe, and that can come in many ways, many different ways. So one easy way really is the party trying to get somewhere. We need to get across to find something we're looking for. Okay, great. Well, how do we get there? Who knows the way? And some old guy steps up and says, I know the way. Oh, yes. Vorgrath the Elder, please tell us, how do you get to wherever? Well, you have to go through the ghastly wetlands, make for the great mound, and when you get there, look for this thing there and then turn northeast and follow that. Okay, great. Well, what does that mean for the party? Well, they have to find the great mound. So there's a reason for them to then, if they're in this hex, to go, oh, look, the great mound, and we need to go there. It's not just enough to cite it, because we need to go there. So we need to stand there and be precise, turn to the northeast, and then move. So great. And then once they get there, well, what's going on about it? What might they find? Maybe there are little cairns built up on top of the great mound. Maybe we already talked about these discoveries, the abandoned fishing hut. Well, I haven't decided where that is. Maybe that's on the far side of the mound. Maybe it's on the mound itself. Maybe it's on some other little bit of dry land, but it's fairly close within sight of the great mound. So once they get there, they can see the fishing hut. Maybe there's some kind of trail. Maybe there's some kind of raised. We haven't talked about how deep or wet this wetlands is, so it might not be all that deep in places. Maybe there's some kind of mud track on more raised ground that's going to lead off there. But there are things now that we have uncovered at the Great Mound, which are leading us in different places. Sure, we could go northeast on our way, but wait a minute, that track is kind of going in the same direction, or maybe it's going north, or maybe we weren't on some kind of particular mission, so maybe we just need to follow that, or we were told to follow some trail, and that is the trail. Okay, so now we follow it, and now what else is on that trail? Well, the abandoned fishing hut. And then from the abandoned fishing hut, this might lead to other discoveries. So each discovery, in my mind anyway, and of course this is up to you, but each discovery really just takes kind of a singular action. You're at the mound, you investigate the mound, you find the footpath leads to the discovery. Discovery is not, it's not the secret. It's not super hidden either, but it's not so obvious that you just spot it. You kind of have to find it, but the clue, the key to open that gate to get there, it's at that, it's kind of at the discovery. And you could have multiple discovery, or you could have multiple signs, you get multiple discoveries, you can have all kinds of stuff. So it doesn't have to be everything goes to the mound, but it might, because in this part of the ghastly wetlands, the mound is kind of the center, whether it is literally in the center or it's just the center where it's kind of has gravity on everything. So it would make sense that the fishing hut would probably be near the mound. It might make sense that the shrine is near or at the mound, so on and so forth. Maybe the broken traps were near the mound. You can kind of say that makes sense. But if it doesn't, then just have multiple signs, and then the party can decide, oh, to one, you're following this trail, or you're bushwhacking, and you see to one side there's this mound, and the other side you see there's kind of a weird orchard over there, some weird willow trees or whatever it is. Okay, now you have choices. But these things all lead to each other, and you should kind of feel free to make a web of them. And in my example, the one I did, not the one so much on the demo, because I kind of made that quicker, but in the one I did on stream, there's a bit more of a web effect. Do I have the stream one I did on stream? Where is the one I did on stream? Oh, it's in my, hold on a minute. I can pull it up, I think. Let's see. I believe it's in Affinity. Affinity. Let's see. While that's loading. Yes. I thought I saved it. Nope, that's something else. Nope, that's an early version. Where is my... There we go. Now I can bring on my example. Some stuff got shifted around. Okay, that's okay. So here's my example. I did Mirkwood. I didn't fill in this stuff, but hex size 6. It's an area door. It's ruled by Sauron. It's woodlands. Doesn't really have a minor terrain. Oops. Smooth that down. Let's zoom in here. Okay. So here's one that shows a little bit more of the interconnectedness. So the major sign in this Northern Mirkwood, I think Northern Mirkwood, wherever all the spiders are, and where Sauron's Tower Dol Guldur is, all kinds of giant spider webs. You might follow those webs or follow the density of the webs, or basically just use the webs as kind of a starting point. I think and I think the term I use before is basically you're making a point crawl. The sign becomes your beginning of the point crawl. So if you think of it, you're sort of creating a point crawl within your hex. Hey, thanks. The signs kind of become your starting point of your point crawl, and then they lead you through discoveries. And essentially, if you're able to kind of put all the discoveries together, some number of them, doesn't have to be all of them, but it could be all discovered, then that will kind of uncover the secret. And the secret could be a location, could be something inside the location, could be whatever you want. And they don't have to be fixed for all time. These are all to be variable. New secrets can show up. New discoveries can be made. New signs. Somebody builds something in here. You decide to take over the ghastly wetlands, and you build a fort there. That's probably going to become the new sign, or a new sign. Maybe if you build it on the mound, it'll just kind of replace the great old mound. Will have the castle mound, or mound castle, fort mound, whatever you want to call it. Fort Ghastly Mound, whatever you want to call it, that becomes the sign. But in other words, you're building that point crawl, and then hopefully your party, if they're any kind of decent note takers, even if they don't have a map, because maybe you're not having a map within the hex, but if you're making directions, you might have something that looks something like this. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to do that. Let's see. So we'll call it sample point. Whoa, I didn't mean to do that. Sample point crawl would be, right? So we start from the great old mound. Then we head to the fishing hut, which leads us to the broken, well, let's call it this way. Let's say the Bogman Shrine, which finally leads us to the drowned necropolis. Shrine. There you go. So that would be number 1. But you can have multiple ones. So that's 1. Then you can narrate this to the party. Okay, you've done all this stuff. Great, party. So now you know how to, once you found the great old mound, you know how to then go to the fishing hut, go to the shrine, go to the necropolis. That becomes their path. And then that can be their track. But maybe you also have something like this: the great old mound, the fishing hut, to broken traps, to, I don't know, giant beaver lair. Maybe that giant beaver lair is also a secret. We can add that in down here. A+1. Oh, it does not. There's activity more active. There you've got that. So now we have 2. Now we have 2 secrets. Of course, once they uncover them, they're not really secrets anymore. But if they ever need to backtrack, you can communicate to them that there's, and look, I'm the kind of jerky GM that would tell the party, write this down. Here's how you have figured out how to get to the drowned necropolis. Write it down. Go to the old mound. From the old mound, you navigate to the fishing hut. You go from the old mound to the fishing hut to the shrine to the drowned necropolis. Write it down. And then if next week they only had written down great old mound to the drowned necropolis, I would say, well, you get to the old mound and you cannot, can't figure it out. You're going to have to find it again. Then maybe they got to refine it. Maybe they got to make some rolls. That's me, because I like to encourage the party to write things down and to use the tools they have at disposal, which is generally pen and paper, and heck, not even that, really just typing it into the chat. Though a couple of players, they definitely still make use of pen and paper, even though we're playing on Discord. They'll actually literally write it down, which I suppose is good and bad. Good in that I think those things help with memory more than typing, but bad in that if they miss a session or if they can't find their notebook or whatnot, then the party doesn't have access to the things, even if they did exactly what they should have done and write it down. And then something else. So there's another way here. So I didn't have it in this example, but I believe I used it. I think in here is in doing this Northern Mirkwood, right? This discovery, the stream leads to a bunch of things, but it also leads into another way to get into another hex. So in this case, you follow the stream, it flows into Mirkwood south, which again gives you kind of a point crawl. This time, this point crawl is going across your hexes. And I really, what I like about this for myself, hopefully for you guys too, is that one, you get to kind of combine, if you appreciate hex crawl sort of mechanics, but you also appreciate point crawl mechanics. I always think that there's room for both in just different situations, but there often comes that concept of you start off with a hex crawl if you really are exploring, right? You're not following known roads, known paths, because those are kind of point crawls already. But I think the natural evolution of if the party is staying in one place and conducting business there is you're going to go from just exploration to a point crawl. It's generally going to go there because, for example, you're camping, you're searching for the Lost Dutchman mine. It's in this hex of mountains. You set up a base camp. That base camp becomes your point zero. Then you're looking around for different things, trying to find different signposts, different symbols, whatever. Maybe you have some kind of old map. And as you're finding those, you are building that point crawl. Now, if you do eventually find the mines, maybe the first time, hopefully even the first time you're writing it down, but you're finding it. But then over time, you're going to be doing less of the getting lost, right? It's like anything. You're in a strange neighborhood. The first time you walk in and you're getting lost. Second time, you're starting to get your bearings. Third time, fourth time. And then before you know it, if you live in that neighborhood, suddenly you can walk through the place blindfolded and you know exactly where you're going. And then you've kind of reached, well, we don't need to, for this area, engage hex crawl mechanics. So part of this is to help give a framework, a scaffolding for how that might work, going from the super obvious thing to either other less obvious things, maybe super obvious things in another hex. We're looking at like that old concept of ley lines, the old straight roads that, right, this concept that in, what was it, Great Britain, maybe elsewhere, that there were these straight roads that led from point to point. If there was something to that, maybe you could have, hey, the old mound over here connects to the old mound over there in some way. So you find this one, start finding the traces of road, and then you could find maybe what would be the old Roman roads or the old roads of some civilization far gone that happen to have these places, and then you're connecting them together. And I also want to encourage folks, myself including in that, to use these in your campaign, in your plot hooks, in your things, right? Don't just have them there. Give your players reasons to find this stuff. Say to them, hey, you got to find this thing. To find this thing, you need to find this other thing first, either because maybe you need something that's there, or like often is done, like with Lost Dutchman Mine. Have you ever seen these maps? Who knows if they were legit or not, for like old treasure maps, right? Find the rock that looks like a human face and then turn the west and do that. It's all about finding these things. Those are those discoveries. Rock, you know, you would type in there. Let me go back to my other thing. You would type in here in a discovery, rock that looks like a human face. And what does that do? Well, that sends you on the road. If you already have the map, then you would know to go there and follow that east, northeast, and then that would lead you to maybe something or something else. Follow that along. And you get to kind of build that out. And that's kind of the system in a nutshell, as it were. A very long, drawn out nutshell, a very hard nut with a crusty shell in there. And this, you can get this on it's on Patreon right now, and also for channel members. I wish YouTube, I don't know if they'll ever do this, because I had to put it for channel members. If you're a channel member and you try to get the image and it won't let me know. It's hard for me. I don't really know how the stuff works with channel members. So I posted it as a photo image, and it's a big image. It's like 2000 by 2000 or whatever, you know, obviously in this format, PNG. So it should hopefully let you download it, but I don't know. So let me know. Otherwise, it's on Patreon as a standalone PDF. I'm slowly trying to finish a bunch of stuff to put it together, and this will end up in that stuff. So if you don't feel like becoming a member or a patron, but you want to get a hold of this, it will be made available eventually. But if you want now, and potentially other stuff that I have kind of working on, then the fastest, easiest, quickest way, while you can also support me, is to become a Patreon channel member. I would say you got to pick one. Probably pick Patreon, because I can easily attach different file types, and I don't know how to do that well for YouTube. YouTube hasn't really. I feel like YouTube with channel members, which I need to do better with that too, is I think they want to. It's geared more towards video awards, right? Things like rewards. Things like, okay, I'll do a members only stream, or I'll do whatever. And I need to do some stuff with that, but I can't. But since a lot of things I'm doing is I'm trying to give materials, I haven't found a way to really translate it well to what YouTube allows me to do. So still figuring that out. But there's this skinny. Ian says Patreon takes the smallest cut. That's true too. That is true as well. So that is there, but it will, like I said, it'll emerge elsewhere. Anybody got any questions, comments, anything else? I will do probably do the Hex Crawling 101 monthly stream tomorrow, I think, if everything holds true. And hopefully it's a much less hectic day for me tomorrow. Hope everyone's getting ready to go back to school. My daughter goes back to school on Thursday. So she is still out and about today, which was part of why I was so sidetracked. So I was able to access and download it from YouTube. Okay, cool. Cool. Yeah, if anybody wants, if you're a YouTube channel member and you want the PDF, the image doesn't work for you. I don't have it as a fillable PDF. It's just a flat PDF. But if you want the PDF, get a hold of me and I will get it over to you by hook or by crook. It's just that YouTube, like I said, they don't give me an ability to attach something. So I just get, give me an image. It's like, okay, so I put the image that basically I spat out of Affinity right there. Oh, and just people had asking for a resource. So I did put a resources section here. That was one of the things I added. And I also added this hex effects because I like the idea. This is something that we read in an article a couple weeks ago. I've been thinking about this prior as well, but being able to add stuff in here, things that might be happening, kind of like a layer effect, but for your hex. So it could be in our case, we had the yellow fog would be a hex effect. So you'd write that in here. Resources, giant beaver pelts or giant beavers, whatever is a resource might be in there. So you might write that in there. So I did add that in. Folks asked for it. So other folks mentioned maybe wanting roads and paths, but that to me, those are parts of your discoveries. They would be down here. If it's super obvious, you put in a sign. There's a road that runs through here and it's clear as day. Great. If it's something that you have to find, like an overgrown road or game trail or something else, write it here. And then you can link it up to wherever it leads to. If the road, kind of going back to what I had here, game trail. You can find the game trail from the spider webs. The game trail leads to the stream. And so you kind of have this thing. You can find the game trail from the stream. The game trail will take you to the stream, so on and so forth. So that's where I would put my roads and paths and things like that. And then magical stream. The stream is also somewhat of a path. It's, let's say, you can follow it. So there it flows. And the other thing, this game trail, but also goes somewhere else. So all your kind of your navigation sort of stuff you can find would be in that block, basically. I think anything else? Did I forget to cover? Oh, I didn't fill these out of my demo, but just location and domain. Who owns it? Where is it? This is kind of if you have regions that you're slotting this hex into. So Mirkwood North might be, I think in the other thing I called the area door, but maybe Mirkwood North would be part of Mirkwood or whatever. I was also thinking you could use a lot of this stuff for your towns and settlements, at least of larger size. Maybe for a district, you could have one of these. So for example, you might have on the docks, you've got the wharves, you've got the inn, you've got the clear and customs house, then discoveries, I don't know, sewers, some other thing, warehouse, whatever. And then maybe here, Thieves Guild, smuggler town, something like that. You could probably work that also. And I think you could also do it with dungeons too, if you wanted to really think about these same sorts of things. You're in the necropolis. So what do you have? You've got the, I don't know, what would be the ritual amphitheater. And then you have a whole bunch of things off here, the embalming room, the embalming room, what other rooms might there be? The embalming room, the mummifying chamber, I don't know, the entrail pits, and then the secret, maybe some kind of sub area. I feel like you could adapt this, and maybe you could adapt this to a dungeon or structure kind of space also, if you wanted to build it in terms of thinking about these things you want out of it. And I guess that's the other point of this, is kind of trying to think about your hexes and kind of like, well, what's going on here? What makes this thing interesting? Because that's kind of I think both the fun thing with hexes, but also the challenging thing is, why is this hex here? Not in terms of, it's here because you have your lands are wide and long, and so they need things, but like, why are we describing it, right? Why are we even putting it on a map to look at? Why isn't it just a blank space? And why are we spending time even thinking about it? Try to help structure as you answer that particular question. I think that's all I've got. So unless you guys have some questions for me, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to talk about with this, but I don't I don't think so. I think between the other streams and then this, I think we've covered everything there is to cover on this. I will I'll have some material soon that we'll be using this formatting. So you'll be able to see that just in that kind of sense, in kind of a supplement sort of way, how this would work. It's not going to use this whole page because for a supplement, it's going to be a little bit more, I want to be more efficient with my space. This is laid out for being able to easily write on it. I printed this out as it's not, I think it's A5. I don't know if it's A4, A5, whatever. But basically, you print out kind of his letter size, and it's fairly comfortable, enough room to print stuff off. Obviously, if I was going to write as a supplement, I don't need that much space. So I would kind of use something probably with this, but a little bit, maybe flesh it out a little bit more. Maybe add some iconography in there as well. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? At some point, I'm going to go through. I noticed. So if you follow me over the weekend, I posted some pictures of some game books that I rescued from storage, which is going to be interesting because a lot of them, or at least the ones I posted, were mostly forgotten. Most people remembered Midnight, but there's still a lot of people who were like, "That's new to me." And then also some of the sword and sorcery books that I had. I have a couple. Well, did I post them all? Because I posted the one that was about Excalibur, and then I posted the one that was a Monty Cook. I guess before he went on his own, his Monty Cook games. He wrote his Arcana Unearthed. I guess there's another one in that series. Someone else pointed out that was supposed to be good. Arcana Unearthed was the one I have. And then I guess there's another one I have to look up again. I have a couple other books, but I also have my game books from that homebrew sci-fi game that I played for like 15 years. And I had forgotten just how much material I had. I won't go through it in depth because it'll make very little sense to anybody who hasn't played the game. But I mean, it's a stack, a folder that a binder that's just like this big and is, oh my gosh, my Cheeto hands is this big and overflowing, and then like a bunch of other books, and it's all just stuff because the main part of that game was you're creating your own technology for your empire. So I still had my laminated standard operating procedure card that's way too complicated. I looked at it now and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so complicated because I had all these different things going on, and like I had like a notation of, was it all my PCs, only certain PCs? Because some things we'd only get, and you get limited supply of. So I'd have something that was, well, only this PC has it. These other PCs don't. So then that PC, it's always on. Those other PCs don't have it. Or these two PCs have it and these don't. Or this everybody. It was funny. But I'll go through it at least in a little bit because it's kind of like a time capsule. I'd forgotten just how much work I'd put in that. And I mean, it was all fun. I hate to say, maybe work is not, I guess effort might be the keyword, but it's Studio B. When those other books are Studio B also. So you have to wait a little bit for me to get over to them. They don't have room for them here at the end, but they are safely archived at Studio B. So next time I'm at Studio B, which I will be for ShireCon, which I guess is another thing that's next up in the news. Before I head out, ShireCon, it's when is it? It's where's my calendar? Is it the ShireCon the 15th? Starts on the 15th. 15th through the 16th. It's basically 2 days. Let's start off as one day being on the Saturday. It would be on the Saturday, but the Friday night was always, from what I understand, because I've only been to it once before, Friday night was always kind of an informal gaming night. People would come in, roll in, just kind of play some games. They decided to convert it to kind of a formal night. So it's kind of a half day Friday or Friday afternoon, evening into Saturday. It's in Connecticut. You can look up ShireCon. If you happen to be over there, you can come and say hi because I will be there playing games. I'm not running anything. I'm playing games. Playing some games, gonna play in Bat in the Attic's game. I forget who else's game I have. Daniel from Bandits Keep is gonna be there. He's running a game. I might shift one of my games to play in his game. We'll see how it goes. But that's also coming up. All right, folks. Well, I'm going to call it a stream. If nobody has anything else to say, I'm going to take that as consent, assent, consent, descent. And so let me know. I'll put the link to it in the show notes if you're interested. Otherwise, there'll be more to come, and we will chat again. Hopefully tomorrow. Like I said, I think that will be the Hex Drawing 101 monthly stream. So look forward to that. Other than that, folks, enjoy the rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, everybody, and I will talk to you later. Bye now.